Can everyone hear me okay? Or is that a no?
I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. All right, so do we have any questions to start with, either pertaining to what we talked about last week or anything that's happened since? Could be awakening, could be land of the woo stuff, whatever.
Could you talk more, Ryan, about how your woo-woo stuff, like astral projection, lucid dreaming, uh occult mystical stuff with that faith healer, um bike ride to the YouTuber, how that's all sort of shaped your so-called awakening. Um
Mm,
and then uh I know different teachers will say, obviously, it doesn't matter. There's a part of me that's like bullshit.
right.
I
I
mean,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to create a story around it, but I'm going to create a story around it. Uh, uh, yeah. I mean, if you could speak to that, and
Yeah,
you know what I'm
one
driving
thing,
at, yeah.
yeah. Well, one thing I'll say right off the bat, pertaining to that is that this or reality or the natural state, radiant presence, Mahamudra, whatever we want to call this, um, it's not something that's produced, but it is something that's recognized. Or it's called realization for a reason. And it seems to be the case that yeah, of course there's people that had this open up or this realization occur spontaneously or as a result of the crisis, but um, it seems that when you look at the biographies of most of these people, that they were meditating for quite some time. So they could say that it's acausal as much as they like, but when you just look at how they were living and what their interests were, it's clear that there was some relation. So I had many teachers, or I still have teachers, but one of them that's a good example is Tina Rasmussen. So Tina Rasmussen did a year-long retreat, and it was during her year of silence. She just lived in her apartment. I think she was living in California at the time, and she just meditated for a whole year and didn't talk to anybody for a year. I think someone would come and meet with her once a month just to check in. But besides that, she was meditating all the time. So doesn't mean that meditation necessarily produces awakening, but it does seem to be a causal factor, even in people like Jim Newman and UG Krishnamurti that vehemently deny any relationship between their spiritual practices and meditation and the awakening that they've both gained fame for. In Jim Newman's case, he was like doing this for 15 years, and UG Krishnamurti was practicing mantras like out of the womb. So his uncle, I believe, was a lawyer for the Theosophical Society, and there were some auspicious things around his birth. So being in a Brahmin family, um, yeah, he was raised with all of that. But a lot of people are, so the argument can be made that that it's not causal. We don't totally know. But it does seem that something opens as a result, or in connection to meditation practice and all of this. So Carla, you're new, so you don't know as much about my story. So that may be why David's asking me to mention certain things, like how this all began or how it all started. And without having to rehash, my childhood and all of that, I can just take some short blips and put them together, and the story so-called starts to make sense from there. But I wasn't born with, or I didn't have any kind of natural psychic abilities or out of body experiences or lucid dreams or anything like that. I think I had a precognitive dream once, which was interesting because it was a shared precognitive dream with a friend, and we were both like 15. It's funny, my mother's gonna watch this, so she'll remember this. But at the time I was smoking and selling weed, and my friend showed up, and we both had this dream that my mother like came into my room, opened a drawer, found the bag, and then like tossed it in the trash. Or like just took it out of the room and just like tossed it in the garbage bin outside. And he came over, and I said, "Hey, I had this really weird dream that my mom found our stash." And he's like, "That's crazy. I had the exact same dream. Whoa, that's so weird." And then we went out to Taco Bell, and then we came back, and stash was gone. And then I looked at him, we both looked at each other, and we are like, "It's in the black trash can." Like, we both knew which trash can it would be in because we dreamt of it. And we're like, "Oh, no way, this can't be real." So then we together, both of us go outside, we open the trash can, and and there it is. And mind you, this had never happened before. Like, she had never found the stash or whatever or anything like that. So it was very peculiar. That was the only really precognitive thing that I had that had happened with another person as well. So, but weird stuff like that, when it happens, especially when you're that young, it doesn't fit into like what makes sense in reality. So you kind of just, I don't know, laugh about it and keep smoking. So that was that. And yeah, so my dad was a meth user. So if you look at the pain of my youth and then my teen years, it really gave me the right design to become obsessed with these things. So yeah, as soon as I had my first like real spiritual experience or opening on mushrooms, I just became like, it's the only thing that existed after that. I had to read everything. I had to read Carlos Castaneda. I had to read everything I could get my hands on. Because when I took those mushrooms, my consciousness did things that I didn't know were possible. Like, I'm staring in the mirror, and I'm alone, and I'm spontaneously transported to all these like mostly Aztec realities that were just horrifying. In one of these realities that I was either in or hallucinating, I don't know. I still don't know. But it was a kind of shamanic initiation, really. I was experiencing that this guy was cutting my chest open, ripping out my heart, and then holding it in front of me, like as I was screaming. And then it would just repeat, looping again and again and again, the chest being cut open, the heart being ripped out. And I just screamed and screamed and screamed until I couldn't scream anymore. Like the psychic trauma was like fracturing my consciousness. And because my mind was being split from that horror, it began to experience like multiple realities simultaneously. It was my first non-dual experience, my first non-local experience. There was visions of being every single person that touched that mushroom, and it never occurred to me that you just take the mushrooms or whatever. You don't think anything about it, but it didn't occur to me like the path that mushroom took to get to me. Like, yeah, so I saw this whole like drug trafficking thing, and I was the guy taking the mushrooms across the border or whatever, and then killing a woman and throwing her in a ditch, and then I was the gun and I was the woman and I was the ditch, and all of this was like happening simultaneously, and it felt like it had lasted aeons. And then I'm back in the bathroom and it's only been a minute, and that got my attention. There's so much had happened, but really basically no time had passed. And yeah, so that's really where it began. And so I read all the Castaneda stuff and started doing the lucid dreaming. And lucid dreaming is the gateway to other things. It's lucid dreaming is the gateway to out of body, is the gateway to precognitive dreams, is the gateway to communicating with the archetypes of your own subconscious, like Carl Jung. And basically, lucid dreaming is a way to actually experience internal family systems, like face to face with these parts of yourself. And I have done that. I've had conversations with dream characters, and the things they've revealed were very interesting. Anyways, like all of this opened up as a result of dream work. And yeah, and during that time where it was like the summer that I graduated high school, and most of my friends, most of the people that I hung out with were going off to college. Yeah, I was in a particular high school, but I had to drop out of high school. I couldn't finish like. So the high school that I was at had this thing where like you had to pass a foreign language and you had to pass trigonometry, and like, so in ninth grade I failed Spanish, in 10th grade I failed sign language, because both my Spanish class and my sign language class were like the first period classes. So I just couldn't stay awake. I especially couldn't stay awake in sign language because no one was saying anything. It's just silent. So, I just couldn't stay awake in sign language. So I failed sign language. And in 11th grade, I'm a junior, and I'm like the only junior in Spanish 1, And yeah, halfway through the semester, I couldn't pass it, or I knew I wasn't going to pass it. And so I came to my dad, or I went to talk to my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm going to flunk out of high school. And he's like, shut the fuck up. You're not going to flunk out of high school. What are you talking about? And I was like, no, really, I'm going to flunk out of high school. And he's like, you're kidding. And I was like, no, I'm not going to pass Spanish. Like this semester that I just did, like this was my last chance. Like it's over. And he didn't believe me. So we went to the high school and he spoke to the counselor, and they're like, yeah, he's not going to pass. He's like, can't believe this. So I flunk out of high school, and I end up in this like continuation program. It's basically the high school for the people that get kicked out of high school, or they're coming out of juvenile hall, or they're coming out of jail or something, or they're on drugs, or they're on probation or whatever. So I end up there, and my official high school diploma is from there. The school is called Opportunities for Learning. That's how bad it was. It's called Opportunities for Learning. I graduated from opportunities for learning. So, but I still hung out with all my friends from the high school that I left. So they were all going off to college, and they were all pretty smart people. So they went off to, Yale, UC, whatever school it was. And yeah, and I was strung out on psychedelics and learning about all of this. And a friend introduced me to, he sent me a video of this YouTuber that was doing lucid dreaming. And this was the early days of YouTube. So like really, really early. I think this is like 2009 or 2010. And this is like it's just a guy and his walking through his house talking about lucid dreaming. It's like the most low quality, poor quality video ever. But the guy went viral from it. And I saw that he had done some videos. He was living in a northern part of California called Arcata, which is near the California-Oregon border. And so I see this guy's videos and I'm just like, there's like this was the first time I really heard the inner voice that was not in relationship to getting arrested or getting in trouble. Because I actually did have precognition when it came to getting arrested or whatever. So the inner voice was there as a form of protection, but it was never there as a form of like guiding me in a specific direction up to this point. So I see this guy's video and there's just this inner voice that says, go meet this guy. Like, doesn't matter what you have to do, go meet this guy. So yeah, this is like July 2010 or 2009. I was 17. I leave a letter to my parents that said, I'm going on a bike ride to Northern California. It's awesome that I'm talking about this because one of the guys who's actually a subscriber from that time, he just hopped in the call and he actually knows the person I'm referring to in this whole story from, I don't know, what, 16, 15 years ago now. So I write this letter to my parents and I say, hey, I'm going on this bike ride. I'm going to bike to Northern California. This is like 600 miles. Okay. And I just said like in bold letters, do not call the police. Like, I'm fine. Don't call the police. And then I said, Dad, make sure Mom does not call the police. So I shut my phone off because I know they were going to blow up my phone. And my mom had all these voice messages crying, come back, please. Oh, please. What are we going to do? I wish I had those voice messages. So anyways, so I disassemble a mounted bike. I put it in a cardboard box. I get on a Greyhound to San Francisco. And then from San Francisco, I reassemble the bike and I start biking towards Oregon. Mind you, I didn't really think this through. At the time there was no smartphones, or at least I didn't have one. So I had to write down street by street, every single street I would take and like turn left here, turn right here. So I had I either had a sheet of paper or I had it printed out on the phone in a notepad in one of those old Nokia phones. So I did that and yeah, so I start biking and I didn't consider what 100 miles would be like with incline. Like that just didn't occur to me that there would be such severe incline getting out of San Francisco. So I'm on like, I don't know, I've been biking for like 10 hours now or something like that. And there was so much incline. I had this like 50-pound backpack full of sardines and nuts and clothes, but just mostly food. And yeah, it's like 10 hours in and my legs are shot. I literally can't bike anymore. Yeah, I couldn't bike anymore. I couldn't get it further up the hill. So I just like walked the bike And then now the sun is starting to set, or it's getting dark, and there was this barn or this house out there through the mountains outside San Francisco, and I was just about to like go knock on the person's door and ask them if I could sleep in their barn. And these guys pulled up with their red truck, and I was like, guys, these are older guys. I was like, I need help. They're like, what's going on? I said, my legs are shot. I'm not gonna make it out of this. I'm not gonna make it out of this mountain range by tonight. And they're like, we can't help you, man. And I said, all right, so I'm just gonna go ask those people if I could sleep in their barn. And then they looked at each other and they were like, all right, fine, get in the truck. So the bike in the truck, and they drove me into a city called Petaluma, which was like, I don't know, like it was only 15 miles, but 15 miles up and down like this, there's no way I was gonna make it. Yeah. I remember my dad had told me that if you're ever homeless, sleep in churchyards because the police won't bother you there, which isn't true actually, but but that's what I thought it was true at the time. And so I knock on this church door. It's Korean church or something, and I asked the guy if I could sleep in his churchyard, and he just looked at me. He's like, okay, there's a youth circle happening right now. Just come and sit with everybody. And they were talking about Jesus, and yeah, they were just talking about Jesus. And yeah, he loaded my bike into his van, and he bought me a hotel room, and he said good luck. And yeah, and from then on, I still had a long ways to go to get to Oregon or to get to Arcata. So I take buses sometimes, but a lot of the time I just biked. I like slept in parks, and sometimes there weren't any parks, so I just sleep on the side of the road or like between the road and the freeway. There's usually like trees and whatever between roads and freeways in California. So if you just go in there, people won't be able to see you. So I slept in a lot of places like that until, I don't know, 8 days later or something, I finally made it to Arcata. So I make it to this YouTuber's place, and I tell him I'm in Arcata. He thought I flew in. And so I was like, hey, I'm here. And he's like, what are you doing with a bike? And he's like, I just biked here from Los Angeles. He's like, you did what? I was like, yeah, I took a Greyhound to San Francisco, and then I biked the rest of the way. And he's like, dude, you're out of your mind. I got to get you on my YouTube channel. And so I did a video on his YouTube channel, and he started a channel for me, which is the channel that I have now. And instantly I had like 2,000 subscribers, and I was having some spiritual experiences at the time, or I had just started the astral projection stuff. So I had some stuff to say about it, you know? And during that time I was having, like, from around the graduation, high school graduation, to the time I did this bike ride, or just that whole phase of my awakening, I was having a very deep heart opening. I mean, that's the only way I could describe it. Like I just couldn't stop talking about love. And for some reason, yeah, I had just like realized how much I loved my parents and people and the friends in my life and everything. And that had lasted like months. You know, it was just ongoing, this like open heart thing. And I think at the time, I think what I found most profound was all the astral projection stuff. But in hindsight, looking back, that was what was most profound about it. That there was something else that was like speaking through me, this very heart-centered thing. And yeah, So overnight, and YouTube was early in those days. So like overnight, I had people wanting to meet me, and my videos were getting like 50,000 views each. It was insane. Like my whole channel now has like 200 videos, and I still don't have 50,000 views. Like back then, like one video was 50,000 views. So it completely all went to my head, of course, as it would. So, you know, I thought I was some alien thing, and was really into the new age stuff, at least at that time. And yeah, so that's how all that began. Um, After meeting his name was Reese. After meeting Reese, um, I think I just took a Greyhound back home, and I got ready for Burning Man. So then I went to Burning Man, and yeah, after that I did my first Vipassana, and then of course with Vipassana, Goenka's like, don't drink, don't do drugs, all this. So I took that seriously, and yeah, just got into Buddhist meditation. But that's at least how things began. Um, and within a 2-year period, I had a near-death experience eating an ounce of Amanita muscaria on accident. Well, I didn't know that it was poisonous at like high dosages like that. So yeah, I had used it for lucid dreaming, so I didn't think anything was gonna come of it. But yeah, I ate 32 grams of Amanita muscaria and died. Well, I wasn't in a hospital, so I can't know for sure if I like flatlined, but um yeah, it was death. It was like not an ego death, you know, it was like physically like fried my nervous system, and the pain was so intense. It was gonna kill me. It was like being burned alive. So what had happened was that in my, you know, on this, and I'll just get through this one briefly. Basically, my consciousness became awake for the first time, like really, really hyper aware. And because I was hyper aware and I couldn't I couldn't stop being aware, um, my body fell asleep, but my mind remained awake. And also the reason I was interested in Amanita was because um, a famous ethnomycologist, Gordon Wasson, wrote a book about it. He theorized that the Amanita was actually the soma of the Veda. And then another scientist, both of them worked with the CIA. So I think they had experimented with Amanitas on soldiers and things like that. But he wrote a book called The Sacred Door, The Mushroom and the Sacred Door to the Key, Mushroom and the Sacred Key to the Door of Eternity, or something like that. It was Andrea Puharich. So I skimmed through both of these, but neither of them had mentioned, at least not to my recollection, anything about high dosages. And yeah, so, and I had taken 7 grams before. I thought it was all good. So yeah, I took that, and then my body fell asleep. My mind stayed awake. Next thing I know, I'm in a void, and it's just black. Can't think, can't talk to myself, don't have a body. There was just nothing, just a complete void. But there was this little feeling tone of like, oh, fuck, this is bad. Like, of all the bad things that have happened, this one is the worst. Like, bar none, my life is in danger. I just knew all of this, even though I couldn't verbalize it. I was like, this is a terrible situation. And so there's this little light that appears at some point, and I start following it. And fast forward however long it was I was in there. Suddenly, I'm like spinning towards the light, like centrifuge speed. I'm being burned alive, like literally as if I was a person being burned alive at the stake. My whole everything was on fire. I'd never known pain like that. I have never experienced pain even comparable to that since that day. It's not even close. And yeah, and like way out there in infinity, or going into this light, I suddenly hear this person screaming, like way out there. Just hear this guy screaming at the top of his lungs. Ah! And yeah, and then I find myself phasing, I find my consciousness phasing back to my body. I'm in the tent, I'm screaming. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs because everything's burning. And my friends are in the tent and they're like, what do we do? Do we call 911? What are his vocal cords going to burst? He's been screaming at the top of his lungs for 30 minutes. People are going to think we're torturing someone over here. Someone's going to call the police on us. What do we do? What do we do? Everyone's freaking out. And what happened next, I completely hallucinated. Apparently this never happened, or this wasn't what was said to me. My friend Kevin, he holds me by the face and he just says, Ryan, follow the light. Follow the light. And in that moment, I had to decide. I was like, if I go further into this light, the pain might kill me. If I don't go further into this light, the pain might kill me. And in that moment, I felt the presence of all the masters in time. So like the Buddha, Jesus, all of them that I had read or known and didn't know. And I felt their presence. And I just knew that I couldn't die tonight. And I forced my consciousness into that point of light, like with every ounce of willpower I could muster. Like I didn't know that power like that was in me. But once my life was in jeopardy, I really was able to dig so deep. Like I pushed my consciousness into that star, like my life depended on it, because it did. And I forced my everything into that star. And the pain got even worse. It's like first it went from being on fire, and then the next thing, I'm going through a meat grinder. I'm literally going through a meat grinder and I'm being ripped to shreds. Yeah, and then when it reached like the full capacity of the pain, it turned to bliss. And the rotation reversed, like it was now going counterclockwise. Bliss, bliss, bliss. I never knew bliss like this. Like I didn't, like this is not possible for humans. It was like, yeah, like the bliss of God or the bliss of heaven or something. And eventually the spinning just stopped. And there was this, like, it was like a floor of light going into infinity, into space. And one moment I was there and the whole universe was silent, and then bang, gone. Like a flame being blown out. I ceased to exist. There was just forever, infinity, eternity, light, just only light, like I had become light, or light was all that existed. There was just infinite light. And there was no recollection I ever existed. There was no thoughts. There were no forms. There were no worlds. There was no time. There was just perfect, infinite, eternal light everywhere, everything. And so somehow my body heard someone saying my name. And then like consciousness appeared here again. and I vomited. I crawled actually. I couldn't walk. I crawled to the edge of the tent and pissed, vomited. And then as I was passing out, I realized what was causing all the pain, like what was incinerating my consciousness. That light is so powerful that if it had hit me all at once, I would have died. Yeah, if whatever that was, enlightenment, I don't know, enlightenment, God, uh, it's so bright, it'll kill you. And yeah, and then I lost consciousness. And then I woke up the next morning as if nothing had happened. I was still me, there was no like lasting effect from this. But after that night, I was a believer. And yeah, in that moment where those masters, all the masters in time were with me, and I knew I had to make a choice either to die or to proceed. More than any moment, that was probably the moment I dedicated my existence to this. Yeah. So I survived that, surprisingly. And then I spent the next 7 or 8 years meditating and studying as much as I could. And then when I was 26, so this was 7 years after that, approximately, or 8, I read a line in a book by Ramana Maharshi, and the line said, "Liberation is to know that you were never born." And at the time, I didn't understand what it meant at all. I just started shaking and trembling for no reason. I was on a plane when I had read it. Let me check the battery life. It's good. So I read that line and didn't make any sense. And then the next day, I'm driving, and I remember the exact moment. I was on the 5 freeway northbound. I think I had gone to work, but I forgot something at home, so I was driving back. And yeah, this moment just happened where I couldn't tell where my hands ended and the steering wheel began. And my heart cracked open, and I was everyone, like all the people on the freeway and everything that was around me. It all became me. And I had this continuous, unbroken awareness that just went on for hours, and there was this unity consciousness for hours and hours. It was so deep, I didn't need to sleep. My left brain functioning stopped working. I was a loan officer at the time. I just like staring at the computer. I didn't know what to do. And I've actually left this part out of most of the interviews that I've done because it's quite strange. But the following morning, I was having an out of body experience, and Jesus appeared in the room. And I'm not a Christian, but Jesus appeared in the room, and I felt his unconditional love, and I was just astonished by it. And I felt the descent of the holy fire on my crown, like this liquid fire just descending into my head and neck and chest, and then everything, you know, and the thing with the crown of thorns, I experienced in that moment that it wasn't, the crown of thorns was like the fire raising back up and creating this kind of halo that was right around the crown, this like movement of the fire going like this around the head is what that might have actually been. Like it's a representation of the baptism by fire, or the descent of the Pentecost. It's talked about in Acts. So that happened, and then a painting of Tara appeared in the room, and as I was transported into this Pure Land, it was just like the portal itself was made of the hands of Tara. The hands of Tara and all these eyes looking at me. And right as I was about to appear in the Pure Land, the alarm goes off on my phone. And I thought, wow, incredible. So I remained in that state for 10 days or so. And it just wasn't stopping. So I called my best friend Ricardo, and I told him, hey man, it happened. He's like, what happened? I'm like, I entered enlightenment. And when I called him, like, you know, it was so deep, that state, like my hand was me, and then the phone was me, and him on the other side was me, and I was talking to myself as him talking to me, and all of this. Like everything was just mirrors. And I left this part out of the interviews as well, but since you're all, I don't even give a shit anymore, actually. I'll just say what happened. So that this opening happened after 4 months of a abstinence period from porn, sex, and masturbation. That was after coming off of doing that for a year. So my first teacher that initiated me, when she gave me initiation, she instructed that to take the training seriously, I was to avoid those three things for an entire year. Probably one of the best things I ever did. So I did it for a year, and then fucking went wild one night and then got back on it the next night, the next day. And so did this other, you know, another 4 month stint of it. And so, yeah, so maybe there was a lot of Kundalini contained at the time. And that was part of why it was so seismic. But yeah, so on the 10th day, I called my friend. I'm like, hey, I think I got enlightenment. And I was, the delusion was starting to step in, you know, the ego a little bit was starting to step in and like claim that state for itself. You know, I did it and all this. And I thought I was like, I'm beyond sin, you know, I'm beyond sin. So I was like, porn, why not? Just pull it up. Literally, the moment I ejaculated, the whole thing shut down. Like the whole thing shut down. Ryan came back to the forefront, like literally as I was coming, it was leaving. Like it was fucking gone. It was over, done, finished. You're kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You screwed it all. You screwed it all up, man. So, so like the whole thing shuts down. The unity disappears. The bliss disappears. All of it, poof, in an instant, in a fraction of an instant, gone. And then I entered the dark night of the soul, obviously, as you would after that. So I was then separated from the God state that I had entered, and suffered immensely for 3 years. And so there was this process of like, plugging this in. There is this process that I call, and some students, I don't know if anyone in here is in this. Actually, yeah, there probably is a couple people in here in this. It's called the foreground background split. So you have this like non-dual awakening operating system that has opened, and you're spending you're experiencing it. Simultaneously, you have the previous operating system that's still present. So there's a conflict. In the morning, you're feeling one with everything. In the evening, you're having a total meltdown and you're depressed and you're feeling the dark night of the soul. So there's this literally a split and a tug of war between the awakened state and the contracted state of the ego identification. It was actually Tina Rasmussen that pointed it out to me that that was part of the process. She's like, yeah, there's a split because the former identification is actually being purified by the awakening that has opened. So part of the purification is like this cosmic waterboarding. That's what the dark night is. The dark night, the abyss, forces you to give up. It actually destroys the remnants of the ego that is attempting to claim the awakening. So you're in the unity, you're out of the unity. You're in the unity, you're out of the unity. You're in the state, you're out of the state. And it just, this process went on and on and on. And at the time, I didn't have anyone to help me through it. Like now it's easy to find people like me, you know, but when this was happening 8 years ago, it wasn't. And when I went to my Zen teachers and I went to people to ask for help, they couldn't help me. And my suffering was horrendous at the time. Tina Rasmussen gave me advice, but that was just that one advice. It wasn't like I had someone to go to every week or every day or every couple days or whatever. Yeah, I didn't have anyone to talk to then. I had to figure it out myself. At some point, it dawned on me that presence was not a specific experience, but it was just the nature of experience itself. It was like in a meditation or something, I realized how absurd it was that I was just like waiting around for presence. I was waiting around for the presence of God as if it was a thing that comes and goes. My problem was that when that presence was, when I was present or when there was awareness, there was all this bliss and like fireworks and unity that came with it. And I was mistaking those qualities for the state, for the awakening itself, for the presence itself. Those are actually just side effects or just byproducts of the thing, but that wasn't apparent at the time. No one told me that. I wish they did. But yeah, it just hit me. I was like, oh, presence, reality, it's not something that's coming or going. Your mind never actually wanders, only your attention does. And that hit me like a freight train. And I think a few months after that or something, I was reading a commentary by a modern practitioner named John Tan on the Bahiya Discourse. The Bahiya Discourse is a teaching from the Buddha where he says, in seeing, there's only the seen. In hearing, there's only the heard. In thinking, there's only what is thought. In feeling, there's only what is felt. Because there's no you in that. I think it's because there's no you in that, there's no you of that. You're neither here, you're neither of this world, nor of the next world, nor between the two. This alone is the end of suffering. And having read the Theravada canon, I had read that passage so many times and did nothing. But this modern practitioner said he read it, and he was in this same like witness consciousness thing that I was in. And he read the Bahiya, or he was contemplating the Bahiya for some reason. And then at a Zendo, someone hit a gong, dong. And in that moment, he realized that it wasn't that awareness was experiencing the sound. It's that awareness was the sound. Sound and awareness are the same thing. We have this impression that mind is experiencing reality, but when we actually investigate, we find it's all the same thing. It's all arising simultaneously. We can't distinguish mind from experience. It's just an impression. It's a dualistic tendency that we have, that separates experience from mind or experience from awareness. So he explained this gong thing, that the sound was awareness, and like I started shaking again. You know, every pore in my body began sweating again, just like it did when I read Ramana those years before. And it was like this moment between moments. It was so strange. And then, dong, a clock goes off. A grandfather clock goes off in my mother's house, and separateness, duality just died. Like the sound was awareness, the walls were awareness, everything was awake. Everything was awake. Everything was awake, and it just remained like that. And it never stopped remaining like that. I remember when it first happened, I was like, there's no way this is gonna last. Impossible. I was in the shower and the freaking water was awake. Everything was alive. Yeah, I think it's been 5 years since that day or something, 4 or 5 years. And the dualistic state of separateness never returned. Yeah. So at least that's like the non-dual, mostly the non-dual stuff that unfolded. But the OBEs, like as a result of the training from the beginning, they just progressively became stranger. Yeah. In the beginning, it was very like localized type experiences. You know, me in the bedroom trying to figure out how to float around and stuff. And then a non-physical teacher appeared and began showing me all kinds of things about the mechanisms of consciousness and sleep. And I'll share one lesson before I take questions or stop. But this was one of the things that being showed me. And it's related to many of what all of you are going through now. Or yeah, it explains the awakening from the hidden or unseen side, essentially. So he pulls me out. He appears in the dreamscape, and I wasn't lucid yet. I was in the dream, and he shook my hand, and then suddenly I became lucid. Like he like jolted me with lucidity somehow. And then I ascended out of the dreamscape, and I was using him as my target for the OBEs. And yeah, I remember feeling all this love for him. It is more appropriate. And that brought me through like a series of, I call them interdimensional transit systems. Like when people phase through states, sometimes they're like passing through this thing of light, and there's all these like streaks going past them, kind of like in 2001 Space Odyssey. It's like, that's actually a lot. Actually, that captures it pretty well. That's one of them. And I appear with this being in his one of the worlds or dimensions that he was overseeing. And we were in this facility, and there were all these humans there, like in latex, in like tight skin black clothing. and some of them were doing psychokinesis, and others were doing healing. Some of them were even doing like martial arts. But yeah, the main ones I was seeing was that people were doing healing and telekinesis or psychokinesis. And I was like, what is going on here? And he said, it said, you're the only one that's going to remember being here because you came here in an out of body experience. I was like, yeah. And he said, these are sleeping humans. And these are the astral bodies of sleeping humans. So what is happening is they are being trained and seeded with the gifts they will awaken to at some point in time in their human incarnation. So as part of their consciousness development and in order to not interfere with the unfolding of their life path and to not like shock them, essentially, we do these things covertly while they're dreaming, and they won't remember what's happening here, but the impressions are in their subconscious. The impressions are now with them, and they'll begin to awaken to these gifts at specific points in time. So the person that becomes the healer, or the when you start developing different psychic abilities, these were things that you were already trained in on other planes of existence long before you even began to think of them, long before you considered them. And I was like, what the hell is this? And he said, it said, this is part of a massive consciousness development operation that is engaged by higher and higher forms of intelligence on lower forms of intelligence or less developed forms of intelligence. And we do it hidden or secretly, because if they were to have these memories, they would be frightened by them. So we facilitate the training, and then the impressions transfer. And at some point, those seeds and impressions open. And that's the awakening that a person experiences, or that's the gift that they begin to develop. So that was an example of the kinds of things it showed me. Yeah, so that's most of my life. I'd say that captures that captures a pretty big chunk of it. Yeah. See what James said. Yeah, this is a good question. What's the difference between dream characters that are you and like an external being that isn't? It's really, with a lot of this stuff, there's not exactly a sign that says I'm not from you, in these states. So the reason that I knew that being wasn't from he wasn't like a manifestation of my subconscious or an archetype in my subconscious. um, was because he appeared externally, not just to me, but to somebody else. Yeah, when I was 20. So that being then began to appear, and out of body experiences that were distinct from the dreamscape. So that means like I had to pass through an interdimensional hyperspace portal or whatever. The first time I encountered it, like besides the one where someone else had seen him or had experienced him as well, was it was during that year of training, a couple of years before the first major shift into non-duality. I've fallen asleep in some weird position, so like fell asleep like this or something. And so my hand was like numb, so it kept me a little awake. And at the time, this name in Arabic kept appearing in meditation, which was so weird. I was like, what the heck? Why do I keep hearing this name in Arabic? And yeah, so when the OBE was triggered like a week later after hearing this name, I just said the name and then like passed through this hyperspace thing, and suddenly there's this, I'm like looking at sand dunes, but the dunes are green. You know, they're like blue, green, and glowing, and the sky is like pitch black, no stars. And I was like, whoa, uh, I'm not home anymore. And I turned to the left, and bang, that being from that experience so many years before was like looking right at me. And it has these lines on its face that this fire, or this like light fire, glows through. Like our humanoid form is like made of blood and bones, but like this being was made of some kind of cosmic fire, and it glowed in these patterns through his face and all over his body, and he was hooded. And yeah, it was like, huh, interesting to find you here. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, go back to your world. And then I woke up here. He just like phased me out. Dream characters cannot do that. From my experiences with them. But I also will share one interesting story with a dream character, because this is David will like this one. So this was more recent. I think it was like 2 years ago. So I'm hanging out. I'm in this library. I become lucid, and there's this like librarian essentially. And when you look at certain dream characters, a lot of them are just like, they're like other objects in the dream. They're very they're very like mechanistic. You know, you don't have a sense that there's any sentience there. But some dream characters, you look at them and they look back at you, and it's spooky. You know, you're like, whoa, what is this? And so I'm with this guy, and I look at him, and he looks back at me, and I sense that sentience, you know. And I was like, what are you? Like, what are you? And he said, I am the memory data and archiving function of your consciousness. And I was like, uh-huh. And I was like, okay, so what happens to you? What do you exist outside of me? And he's like, no. And he knew what I was thinking. So then the next thing he said was, my existence will be terminated at the end of your incarnation. So I will die with you. And so will all the other all the other archetypes that are personifications of functions in your consciousness and qualities of your personality will all die with you. And I was like, wow. I was like, okay, so you're telling me you've seen my entire life? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait up. I like pulled out a chair. I was like, sit down. So I sit him down, and I'm like, okay, so like, how am I doing? And he's like, you do waste quite a bit of time. I was like, I appreciate that. That's good to know. Something I would have told myself. It's like, exactly. And that was that. So the kinds of interactions you have with dream characters, they're often they're very self-reflective. Like they mirror they mirror parts of things, they mirror aspects of yourself, or they can tell you things about yourself that like you did already know, but they weren't necessarily on the radar. These beings are outside of yourself in the same way that David and everyone, Carla, everyone here is outside, you know, you all have your own existences apparently. When it's an external non-physical being that is communicating with you or showing you things, it will show you things that were so far off your map you couldn't even have conceived of it. It was not even an idea that there was a cosmic consciousness development system managed by hierarchies of extremely advanced intelligences that were seeding that development in sleeping humans. Never occurred to me. Never read it anywhere. You hear like vague terms of it, of like the angelic hierarchy is helping with the ascension of the human race into the fifth dimension. You hear shit like that, you know. But like the actual mechanics of how it's done, that's not something I could have I had on my radar. And that's just one thing that I'm sharing. You know, there's all this stuff that I can't even talk about, right? So lots of those things were so far beyond my conceptions of what reality were that it's very unlikely that they were dream characters. Possible, but unlikely. So
Just trying to point out, this is what's so fascinating about what we're talking about and what we've been talking about in the chat, is even using the language of like dream characters. I mean, it's situated in a particular sort of hermeneutic, which is like, let's say, psychoanalysis or depth psychology. And it still is, you know, sort of, uh, I mean, it's the dream, obviously, but it is its own sort of cage. So, um, you know, the awareness that you were talking about before, that your practice allows you to get to. I mean, you know, I think it might be useful to even bring it to this, which is to say, you know, I mean, that's what my original question to you was: what does this mean for a praxis? You know, an emancipatory practice. Um, I do think the cosmological and the practical are, you know, they serve one another, because I do think, you know, what you're speaking to, yeah, it can be like, even like you say, Bob Monroe, there's all these different layers, turtles upon turtles upon turtles, and that's fine, you go through it, but I think that's what, you know, a spiritual practice that's seeking liberation is sort of driving to, which is, you know, and not, and obviously, you know, not everyone has to pursue that. I don't know if Bob Monroe had an interest in it, but like you said, you eventually got to that point. You were doing a lot of lucid dreaming, astral projection, and then why you ever became interested in, like you've said so many times before, you know, the Enlightenment Project. I mean, you did. So, um, yeah, I mean, I do think that they intersect. So,
yeah,
um,
they can. They can intersect, but they don't have to, you know. A lot of teachers, I'd say most don't talk about this stuff. And then it's the other way around too. Most of the ones that were like Bob, or they're these kind of consciousness explorers, they didn't necessarily their interest didn't necessarily go towards non-duality or, you know, awakening, enlightenment, all this stuff. So it can intersect in a specific type of, you know, person or practitioner, but they're different. They're different domains in that one's about exploration and then the other one's about deconstruction. So the question of suffering is only answerable, or the this whole thing about suffering and discovering what you are is a deconstructive process. but that applies primarily to like this physical dimension still. But the question of it leaves the question of, is this all that you are? And that is only answerable through exploration. So yeah, because in the Buddhist model and in many models, you don't need to see what you are on other planes, or what you are on the multidimensional spectrum, because you undermine this notion of are completely, the notion of existence. So when that gets undermined, all these questions about, do you exist after death? Did you exist before this? Is there an afterlife? All of that is destroyed essentially in the realization that it's all simply this, or it's all reality. And with that realization, the mental proliferation ends. So, or gradually it begins to end. And so once that ends, once your the narrative producing function in consciousness ends, there are no more questions. So if there's no more questions and there's no more curiosity, why would there be any exploration? So that's why the paths are so exclusive. They're exclusive from a mechanistic point of view. Because without the curiosity, there's no need for the exploration. And non-duality destroys the curiosity. There's nothing to figure out once this has become evident. So it's fortunate. Yeah. So there's that, but it still leaves one with the question of, what happens after the termination of the body. So like Papaji said that after the body dies, he'll return to the void that existed before the creation of the universe and before the gods and their creations. He said that, and nothing ever happened. So that was his take on it. Nisargadatta was like, yeah, I'll just return to the Satguru, which is what I actually am. And this body is just a dream of that original state. So a lot of people have their version of what prior to our individuated consciousness is, or might be, or whatever. So yeah, if the narrative's done, it's not something you might have questions about, but it's something I still had questions about, or I still am exploring, or it's still unfolding. I don't know if that answered your question, by the way, but there's one other question in here,
Yeah,
actually.
it does. Thank you.
This is a good one. Is there anything that you feel like you'd never tell anyone or speak about, and why? Actually, I talk about most of the things. I feel like I talk about like 95% of what has happened. But then sometimes things happen and then I don't share them immediately. Kind of like they need to cook, you know. Just let it cook for a while before I talk about it. So there's that, but then there's things where I specifically was told you're never to speak of this. So I could talk about what that was, not the thing specifically, or not the details of it specifically, but what happened. 2 years ago, I did a retreat and I entered a specific Buddhist state called the cessation of consciousness, perception, and feeling. It's at least in Theravada Buddhism, it's hail marked as like one of the major attainments. So I entered that like on the fourth day of the retreat, and its effect on me was radical, to say the least. What happened was I did this 6 hour meditation, because like in a chair, and actually because I was challenged to do it. The meditation teacher, my friend Delson, was like, yeah, sit for as long as you can without moving. And I was like, yeah, I think that'll be a long time. And he's like, okay, then do it. And I was like, well, how long? Like 6 hours? And he's like, yeah, if you can last 6 hours, you know. And I was like, oh, if I can last 6 hours, well, hell yeah, I'm gonna last 6 hours. So it was pure ego and or pure competitiveness. And so I sat there. I didn't move for 6 hours, and I kept going through the jhanas and falling out because of the pain in my shoulders and everything and in the body, and then going through them again, and then falling out. I kept popping out, popping in, popping out. And then eventually the three characteristics appeared, or one of them did, which was the suffering door. So the three characteristics in Theravada are suffering, impermanence, and no self. They're qualities of existence, but they're also doors to cessation. So yeah, I don't know. This is the 5th hour or something. I wasn't checking the time, but I get like I'm like taken up on this holy sanctified billow of equanimity, way up into equanimity. And my core attachments appeared. At the time, it was my ex and my dad. Those are really the only things I was holding on to. And they appeared before me, like very clearly in my mind's eye, in this deep equanimity in the 8th jhana. And the voice was like, let them go. And I did. And then boom, just started like falling backwards, like literally falling backwards. And I fell backwards. And then this force like ripped me out of the meditation chair, tunneled me up to the ceiling, dropped me down. And then the last thing I remember seeing was a torus, like it was like this dimension between dimensions. There was just this torus, and then bang, the whole universe disappears, goes offline, everything goes offline, turns back on in an instant. And that's the fruition. Uh, and in that moment, I gained insight into Buddhism's dependent origination. So like the backup reality to this one, instead of seeing ones and zeros, I saw these consciousness or reality appeared as these discs, like these gears. There's no self, no memory, no intention, no attention, no individuated consciousness. You know, after everything turned back online, I didn't even remember it. So like suddenly I'm like in the chair again, and my mind's like, what just happened? And then I review what occurred. I didn't remember anything. The last thing I remember was saying bye to my ex and my dad. And then I remembered the tunneling, and then the whole thing came back, like remembering a dream. I remember the torus, everything going offline, reality appearing as this code of discs. And then my mind exploded in the bliss of emancipation. Like, wow. And then the cessations just started happening spontaneously, like while I was sitting in the first hour and whatever. And it actually affected my consciousness pretty severely. Like you would think that going through this, like your mind would get calmer. My mind just like exploded in activity. Like I couldn't stop thinking of what the hell was I going to tell Delson? Like what's happening to me, you know? And it was a total train wreck. And so the spinning, all the discs were now like in my mind's eye, and they wouldn't stop. They kept spinning. They just kept spinning. And I was like, what is this? And so I laid down and meditated for like what ended up being 9 hours. And at the 5th hour mark or something, I remember I opened my eyes and I looked at a clock. It was exactly 12:08. It was either 12 or it was 12:08. I can't remember exactly. So I look at the clock, come out of meditation, look at the clock. And then I'm like, damn it, this is not ending. And yeah, somehow I let go and boom, like went into cessation again. I opened my eyes, it's 108. And then I reviewed what happened again, remembered the disk field again. And but this time the memory was it was like being all of the discs. It was different. I couldn't tell whether I had dreamt the discs or whether the discs were dreaming me. And this whole like strangeness of it all, it like opened this alternate dimension in my consciousness where, let's just say, something appeared. And instead of having a, so you know, in the near death experience, people have the life review. They have this like, they see everything that happened from their point of view, but then from other people's point of view as well. This was like, instead of a flash backwards, it was like a flash forward. Like I saw the stages of my life to the point of dying, or like to the termination of my incarnation. And it was like this place or this dimension, this knowledge essentially that was like outside of time. I think I've described it before as the truth of your life is revealed. Your destiny is shown. Things that in the past too, even things that you didn't understand that had happened, things that are happening now that you don't understand, and things that will happen that you otherwise would not understand. In this state of knowledge and conversation, the truth of your life is revealed, and reality arises as revelation. What appeared to me, what spoke to me, and what was shown to me from the day that it happened till now, I haven't spoken of it, and I never will. It's the one secret. It's the only secret I've kept. The rest of it, I'll just fly out of my mouth. You know, I can't keep my mouth shut for anything. But what was told to me and shown to me, and the sacredness of that revealing, I'd die before I revealed it, because that's the mandate that was given to me. That was the order. So yeah, and I think the reason why, well, what was shown to me was the reason why this can't be spoken of, or was because if you speak it, it'll change the configurations, it'll change the unfolding of events in time. So some of the things that were shown to me there, like it was shown to me exactly what the meditation teacher was going to say in the interview, like word for word. And it was very specific. I was so blown out. I walked into that room and I looked at Delson straight in the face and I said, "We've already had this conversation." He was like, "Whoa." He actually told me later, he's like, "If you were not a meditation teacher, I would have told you to quit the retreat at that moment, because you were yeah, you were like not in time, man." Yeah. After the knowledge, I call it knowledge and conversation. It's also referred to as knowledge and conversation in the Western mystery tradition. Um, Things took an entire year to occur, and they did. So I never experienced a level of prophecy or precognition like that. And the next insight that arose was my mind's eye transformed into that higher self mainframe that I've talked about before. And so there was a literally, like straight out of the Matrix, there was a wall of screens screens of other me's, uh, other other lives that my higher self was playing, or basically like me and all of these other incarnations were like data streams uploaded into this central data bank, and that there's a collection of information and experiences for some higher purpose, some evolution on a higher, I guess, a more complex level of functioning. And so I see all these screens, and it's as real. It's like a hyper real OBE. I was like, oh my God. I was like looking through the first person point of view scenes through all the screens. And I walked up to one of the screens, and my consciousness started to go through it, and I had the thought, because it was so real. If I go into this, will I disappear from here forever? I was like, fuck it. I just fell through the screen. And I appeared in this woman's body, and like, I don't know what felt like the 1970s, like all the wallpaper and stuff was like 70s style. And I could hear all her thoughts and know all of her feelings, and she had no idea I was there, looking through her eyes. And then she just like walks through the kitchen, goes on the back porch, sits down, and she's just like watching the autumn leaves fall, just watching. And then boom, my consciousness zooms out, goes into another screen, another first person point of view. Boom, comes out another screen. Boom, comes out another screen, another screen, another screen, another screen, another screen. Thousands of screens, like a Rolodex of lives. And when I woke up, my face kept changing, like man, woman, 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 man, man, woman, 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 alien, alien, man, woman, alien, man, woman, alien. Like it just kept like fractions of seconds. My face and my body was changing. And then it stopped. And it was dawn. I was like, oh, thank God it's over. I was like, I made it back to base reality. Thank God. I thought I was gone on that one. And for like a day or 2 days, maybe, yeah, I think it was 2 days. It took like 2 days for this to kind of like dissipate, but all of the images of my life were unfamiliar to me. I didn't have a mother or a father anymore. Ryan didn't exist anymore. I couldn't taste Ryan anymore. The signature of me was gone. And I wasn't any different than like the leaves and the trees and the doors. And that's common in unity consciousness, but I mean the full like you're like an alien. Everything was unrecognizable. Even the closest memories to me that appeared, I felt nothing for them. My ex, my dad, everything, my life, all the sentiment that had gone into my life was gone. And I was looking at the trees, and I thought, I can't imagine why anyone would want this. Like this level of it. You're not a person anymore. Yeah, so that simmered down after 3 days, and started being able to recognize my memories again and things like that. But for a while, it was gone, gone. Oh, that's what happened. Okay, now I remember. I remember that this all happened on like day 6 or day 5. So I still had like 5 more days. So I was like, I could probably, like, if I push this further, it'll probably never come back, any of it, you know? So then it was like, so if I proceed, I will come home not me anymore. And I only had a few months left with my ex before I was going to go to Thailand and become a monk. So I actually like that appeared as a thing in my consciousness. It was like I proceed and I return not as me, and it's all done. I won't be able to hold her the way that I did. I won't feel anything because I'm thinking about her now. I don't feel anything. The people that I loved most, I did not feel anything. And so, yeah, I had a choice. It was like I pursued further or I stop this now. If I stop, I'll return with Ryan left. If I don't, I won't. So I was like, yeah, I can't do that to her. Not with like this little sliver of time that we have left. I can't do this to her. So I quit the retreat on the 6th day, and I just stopped meditating. I went and I told Delson, I said, I'm going to stop meditating. I think it's good. He's like, yeah, you're good. And yeah, so that was that. But yeah, so just the knowledge pertaining to my particular destiny. I don't even know if you know, I don't, the thing with what was told to me, I was like, oh, dude, you know, whatever it was, you know, pertaining to this person or that person or this situation that was supposed to unfold, I was like, bullshit, you know. I don't need to listen to this. Not literally, but that was kind of my attitude. I was like, I don't know if this is gonna happen, you know. And then it happened. I was like, no way. So, but I still don't know if everything that was revealed is gonna happen or would happen or whatever. Because also that state was pretty, you know, I would manage it much better now. It would be much clearer now. But when it was happening then, it was my mind was all over the place. Even though this like dimension of gnosis had opened up, there easily could be some delusion mixed in. It's not like it was super it's not like it was as clear as like when I had entered the mainframe and saw the past lives or you know the dependent origination. All of that was like really, really, you know, because there's no awareness in that state. So you remember the state after the fact. So you just have a clear boom, like recalling a dream. You can interpret it how you want, but the thing is the thing itself, right? But when the destiny was revealed and it's a conversation of what happened, what is happening, what will happen, is possible, there's bias. I have to admit that. So unfortunately, it hasn't been wrong up to this point. So yeah, that was that was the one thing that I don't talk about. Yeah, what appeared to me and then what specifically was shown. And surprisingly, a lot of people that have done the Western magic route and had the knowledge and conversation, they have the same thing. They're like, yeah, I'll leave behind the record so people can read it when I'm dead, but it's not something to be discussed while living. Man, this went on forever. I'm sorry for keeping all of you so late.
Oh, it's so good. Thank you, Ryan. Really.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear and to feel it. Very felt. I'm curious, just really listening to you and all the visuals. I guess the state of madness, you know, I'm curious in all the experiences you were having, like, we've had, and um, yeah, and that trust that you had, right? And if you ever played with that, kind of fighting against feeling mad, or was it ever
Mm,
part of it, or did you, this inclusive quality? David posted something, and it was this inclusivity that was necessary for madness to actually be part of the experience. Um,
I only had madness on the plant medicines.
mm,
So because the psychosis on those was so God, like so palpably undeniable, like had really lost it. Um, I'd never had that come up from meditation. So or from retreats. I could see it coming up, but yeah, there was never a sense. That's not true. There was one thing, but that's one of the things I can't. Yeah.
mm,
But in general, yeah, like psychosis was very specific for me, like the times that I experienced it. And it was really the mark of it was like this total lack of control or like ability to direct attention. And to me, it was very severe when it happened. Like, yeah, like it was a total psychotic episode, you know. When I had the first one on plant medicine, I was hallucinating that I was in an insane asylum.
mm,
Like it was really bad. Or hallucinating I was in a concentration camp, or hallucinating that I was my father the night before he died. And these were all like hyper real. I didn't even know I was in them. That's how deep it was. Because I had taken so much. So yeah, because in my daily stuff, and then outside of those early experiences, mostly it never came up. Like I know what madness is, and it's not something that just knocks on my door, you know.
yeah,
Even
yeah.
even when, but it's interesting that you mentioned it because it is like this thing in the background. Because when I had that experience where those two yak beings appeared, the first thing my mind went to was, oh fuck, I finally lost it. You know?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, cracked. It finally happened, you know. But then I waited and I saw that there was no, psychosis has this looping thing, at least for me. It has this like repetitive loopingness where like the same thought will occur again and again, or even the same like physical reactions will occur again and again. I don't know if you've ever observed an insane person, but they'll
Mhm.
like do something very repetitively. I found that mechanism, that there's a energetic or psychological mechanism behind that repetitiveness, and I could only describe it as looping. And when those yak beings appeared, I wasn't looping, so I was like, oh, I'm not nothing. There's no psychosis to be afraid of right now. That's not an element in this experience. But definitely, when you're on this like edge between realities, um, it's a fear on one hand because it's genuine concern, and then on the other because it's a test. There's a few different kinds of tests in all of this stuff. One of them is the insanity. I call it the insanity gate. Like it's an actual thing that you have to pass through. You feel like you're going to lose it, or you feel like you're losing control, and then you just gotta surrender and relax through it, right? Or feel into the fear of losing your mind or losing yourself, and then proceed with the experience from there. So it's actually a part of the test. It's a test in consciousness. It's built into the system. So that's one of the gates. Another gate is what I call the Mara gate. So that's the confrontation with evil. So it's like a whole different thing, but it's also terrifying. So there's like the psychosis gate, there's the Mara gate. What the other gate is like the lost in time gate. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but there's the gate of like, there's a fear that you'll vanish from here forever and just like just disappear off into infinity or something and never come back. So there's different thresholds for these states, but they all, to me, they all happen just in the context of plant medicine. I had the Mara gate once in meditation. That was pretty terrifying, but the other ones never. So the psychosis gate and then the lost in infinity gate, I've never had those open up. There's probably other ones, but those are the only three I can think of at the moment. Oh, the fear of losing yourself, of your ego dying. That's a gate that most people are familiar with on plant medicine. You don't want to let go. Yeah. So you have your own specific thing because that's a reflection of your propensities. So like if you have the precognitive ability, you have the clairvoyant ability, you have the ability to see things that are not immediately perceptible. That's directly connected to the fear of psychosis. Like it's tied to it. So yeah, because you're like, oh well, schizophrenic people see things before they happen too, like, and they do. So yeah, with things that are related to time, the gate or the initiatory threshold in relation to those abilities is the psychosis gate and the lost in time gate, because it's basically the test for further developing those abilities. Part of the thing with the psychosis too, but this is something that if you look at your experiences on plant medicine, you'll notice this, that the psychosis is part of the fracturing of the localization in space-time. So it's almost like you have to lose it. You have to lose the grip on here to begin to experience other heres, or to begin to experience elsewhere or the other side. Because you took the plant medicine, there's like a chemical element that's involved. So it's basically like a rocket ship into something that would ordinarily take years to develop. So because you're getting a rocket ship, there's a threshold that you're immediately confronted with. It's something that ordinarily would open up in stages, open up gradually. It hits you all at once on the plant medicine. Like if you were developing your clairvoyance and your other abilities, it'd be something that's in the background and something that you're dancing with and working with and overcoming, and gradually learning that, yeah, these are my thoughts, that's precognitive data, that's my narrative thinking, possibly subject to being incorrect, that's the clairvoyant data. You go through this whole process with whatever the skill or the ability is. On plant medicine, none of that happens. You just get blasted and then suddenly you're seeing stuff before it occurs, So because of the acceleration factor, you get a compression of the fear and the thresholds that you would ordinarily have to work through in time. At least that's my theory on it. I could be completely wrong, but that's my sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, the last, maybe a month ago, I think it was around the time that you and I talked, there was this defragmentation that happened, and just a real void, just nothing.
Yeah.
And Yeah, and there was a fear or a panic that did arise for sure. And then I purged and then it vanished,
Yeah.
but it's interesting because when I sit, if I, for hours, like I can feel like whatever that nothingness is has a feeling and I can
Mm,
feel it as I'm sitting, but it's because the plant medicine isn't there. It has like a certain frequency. It's like it's a certain something I can kind of, it's a feeling. And yeah, it's really all I can say.
and yeah, it's like I call it a signature, or it has a specific feeling or like vibe. The same way that
Hmm.
people feel a certain way to you, these areas of consciousness feel a certain way. That feeling of those areas is the gate to entering them. So like that feeling of the nothingness, that feeling of the void is actually the signature of how that void or that area in consciousness appears to your memory and perception and awareness. So you just use that and it can take you right back into it. So yeah, using feelings as signatures is even part of navigating out of body experiences as well. Yeah, like in my case, like if I want to do jhanas, for example,
Hmm.
I just feel into the jhana. Like I feel into
Mm.
those qualities, and then by feeling the qualities of that state, the mind is then drawn into that state. So if you feel the qualities of that nothingness, it'll draw you into that nothingness. Even right now, I could feel the quality of this
Mm.
specific flavor of non-duality, which is like none of this is happening, none of this ever happened, just by because I know what that is. I've experienced it so many times. Just by feeling it, it its flavor takes on the entirety of the experience of the field. Yeah, so that's good. So if you
Yeah,
know
thank you.
if you
Yeah.
know that the signature and how that state feels, if you tune into it and like some fear starts to come up, you can reliably use it as a way to yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like exposing yourself to trauma to like get
Hmm.
desensitized.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
if you can handle it, of
Cool.
course, but yeah, which I think you can.
Yeah.
So
One more question, if I could. Earlier
yeah,
you
yeah,
were
sure.
talking about the spiral of energy, and I've asked a few people this, and I'm curious to hear you speak to it. There was a time when I would close my eyes to sit, and my access point was at an angle,
Mm, that's
you
interesting.
know? Yeah, and I would open my eyes and I would be flush, of course. I close my eyes angled, you know? And with Steven Snyder through David, I did this jhana class, and he did an elemental class. So I did
Mm.
with water. So I took
Oh,
on
nice.
water. Yeah, and it started spinning.
Right.
So it was just this, this movement and going really fast, sped up, sped up, sped up, and then it just released. I don't know, it just opened. It was just, yeah, and then I was sitting and now I'm flush again. Um yeah, and I haven't heard anyone talk about the spinning like you were talking about. Just, and it was going to my left. Yeah. But just curious if anything comes to you. Because, through Zen, Ryoshin's like just move through it, let it
Right.
pass, just let it pass. Something's working its way through.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not causing you pain, or if it's not like causing much of a reaction. I mean, all kinds of stuff happens with meditation. Like
Yeah.
I don't experience much spinning anymore, but I remember there's a period where I was like spinning, freaking felt like I was floating, um, feeling like you're on a roller coaster. You know,
Yeah.
especially with that territory of access concentration where like the body senses start to shut down. That whole terrain of consciousness is
Hmm.
very, very strange.
Hmm.
So I would just say like it's not even something that you need to like watch pass. You know, if it's not bothering you, just continue with the meditation. But
Yeah.
the spinning, in my opinion, is related to the crown chakra. So like, so chakras, they have this, they're depicted as flowers. What they actually are like two, uh, it's like an energy movement in a counterclockwise direction, and then another energy movement in a counterclockwise, and that produces the illusion of petal-like formations. You know,
Hmm.
like you have one movement going like this and the other going like that, and
Yeah.
produces these petal-like formations. So sometimes in meditation, people will feel strong spinning, and it's often just their crown chakra becoming more active. Like the spinning is picking up because there's a descent of spiritual energy into the system. So when you're doing Wada Kasina and then you're getting more concentrated and more absorbed, your system's opening up. So all these side effects can happen. Spinning, floating. You know, if it's not causing pain, it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's causing pain, it depends on the kind of pain. So
Just a little dizzy, but yeah, that was
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is strange. Like
Yeah.
um it's almost like another thing that is possibly happening too, because this happens in out of body experiences, is that there's a loosening of the non-physical body within the physical body. It's like I learned this from an OBE recently. You know the whole Sufi twirling thing, the
Mm-hmm.
dervishes.
Hmm.
So the dervishes, they do this twirling, and um that physical spinning, it's also in an exercise called the five Tibetans. It like speeds up your chakras temporarily. So that's like the exterior teaching on it. But what's actually happening is that I found that that movement prepares you for like an inner dislodgement that allows you to travel in spirit. So like that rotation, if you do it in the pre-OBE state, it actually leads to um, being able to dislodge from the physical body and go into the non-physical levels or planes. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So on one hand, could be side effects of your crown chakra spinning. On another, could just be the spirit loosening up within you, the non-physical body loosening up within you. So yeah, and people do have out of body stuff happen from meditation. It's never happened to me, um, but people have described it. So yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
next class I won't talk as much. We can start to sit more. These last two classes I talked way too much. So
Great to hear your past. No, really amazing. Thank you for sharing the bike ride and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really,
I don't get to share that story very often, so that's pretty cool.
I mean, the pilgrimage. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
it was a journey. It was a journey. at the time I was young. I could handle it, you know. But I think, I mean, I could probably do it now if I was like forced to. But I wouldn't do it voluntarily. Yeah.
You fly.
Yeah, because I was like, because
Yeah.
dude, so many of those nights I was so cold out there. No, actually, that was another trip. Crazy. I've done that trip more. I did that trip twice. But the second time, I think I took buses. I didn't bike ride the second time. So the second time I visited him, it was in the winter, and yeah, and I had to sleep like I had a sleeping bag, and I was just like camping in the redwood forest. And I never considered like how cold it would actually be
Mm,
up there in the
yeah.
forest. But there's one really cool thing happen. If you ever go to the redwood forest, I recommend camping at night, just out there, because if you're in the forest at night, the trees they suck up all the water from the ground, and the redwoods they if you cut them open, they have these very thick veins, so you can actually hear the trees drinking water from the ground. So you hear the whole forest is full of this.
Ooh.
It's so magical. It's like the songs of fairies. It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. And that the night I heard that, I was just alone there, and yeah, it was remarkable. And these hikers came in the morning. They're like, "What the fuck? What are you doing, man?" I was just like, just sleep on the trail.
Doing me.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh, another homeless man, you know,
Right.
a denizen of the forest.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, all right, everyone.
Mm.
The sun's coming up. So next class we can sit, and I'll talk less for sure. But thanks for entertaining the story, and see all of you next Wednesday.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Bye bye.